We are back. I can see that podcast. Preston, Derek, Matt, and we're gonna jump right into this. Saw some debates going on Twitter, and for good reason. There has been this kind of movement to get rid of district play, and it's not like it's the first time the conversation has come up. It's come up before. However, I think it's starting to get a little more sticky because these rankings are a big part of determining which teams are going to the playoffs and which teams aren't. And when you have four teams who are guaranteed spots because they're a district champion, and they might not be as strong as some of the teams who get left out, obviously that's going to raise a red flag. So the question at hand, just make it real simple, and we'll jump right into it. I don't really care who goes first, but should the FHSAA remove district winners as part of the equation to be a top 8 team in a region to get a playoff spot? Should district play be removed altogether? Like, don't even worry about district. You just schedule your 10 games and you play that. Or should there be massive conferences? So it's kind of like a 3-part question. Should there be massive conferences? Should there get rid of districts altogether and coaches just schedule their 10 games out? And or you can have your districts, but winning a district does not guarantee you one of the 8 spots. All right. So whichever one you guys want to tackle first, let's do it.
I think scheduling potentially could. I'm not sure if there is. I think you'd almost have to keep the district type of structure just for scheduling's sake. What you think?
I think there's a workaround because even with those 4 to 5 district games, depending on how big your district is, you still got to fill in, 6, 7 spots regardless. Some counties, they get assistance from the athletic director. Some counties, coaches have to go get their own games. So I think that wouldn't necessarily be a problem with them scheduling their 10 games.
Yeah, I think there's pros and cons like anything. I personally like the district because it does give the kids a level of accomplishment, if they win the district. But at the same token, I like what they currently have. Whereas if you are ranked in that top, 14 schools, you could potentially get. Do they do a wild card in high school? Or is it?
No, they're just at large. They just call them at large.
Okay, so the top teams in the district go to playoffs, and then if a team, I understand what you're saying. Whereas, if they don't win the district, sometimes they don't have that opportunity to go further in the playoffs, even though they might have been a great team. And then there's other teams that might not have been strong as them in the same class going in the district. I think it's a good opportunity for a team to win a championship, a district championship. It gives them that extra motivation. Then they get to go off and play other teams. But I do think that there should be definitely some type of wild card or what you just mentioned, where teams that might not have made it, but they had a great schedule, they're ranked, they're up there, they're a top team, and they might have just not won the district. And that kind of it's like how it felt, I think, with Armwood and Tech last year. They were in the same district. Tech wins, and they go, whereas Armwood might not have. They ended up going to the playoffs, but I know the year before they had a little bit of. So I like the district, like I said, because I like that the teams have get that level of accomplishment. I like how it's grouped up. I like that they, and then I think that there should be a way for other teams to be able to make it into the playoffs. If they've had an extraordinary season, they're able to go and make it a little bit further into the playoffs as well. So there's my standpoint on it.
Yeah, I lean toward the district type of structure also. You're either going to be upset at the end of the year or the beginning of the year. You know what I'm saying? Everybody kind of, shuffles for that. Okay, what's our district look like and all that. I always hesitate to leave it in the hands of someone saying, oh yeah, this team is ranked ahead of this team. I think that opens up a can of worms. I like the district structure, just going into it, knowing what you need to do. I think it makes those district games so important. Late in the year, everybody's kind of fighting for that district title. So I think it creates a lot of excitement. And I think it does open up some opportunities for schools that may not would make it otherwise. But then at the end of the day, the argument is, well, shouldn't the best teams always advance? And I would say if we had a way to assuredly have the best teams, go with that route. But you're still left with someone making a subjective ranking and saying, oh yeah, this team's slides in at number 8, and then number 9 sitting on the outside looking in. So I'm not sure. I don't know if there's a perfect answer.
No, definitely not. I don't think there's a perfect answer at all. I think from our experience, because all we know is districts. When I was playing, there was districts. Derek, you the same as districts, and Matt, when you were in school, there's districts. That's really all we know. But the biggest hamper to progression is tradition, right? So I would tell you that we've always done it one way, but is there another way to do it? And the FHSAA, one thing I do agree is that they have shuffled around the districts multiple times, right? They're kind of trying to balance out districts. So one district is not super weak and then one district is not super tough. So you can see there's obvious effort for them to try to balance this district thing, the district format, to be able to keep the districts, right? So I credit them for that. However, at the same time, you look on the other side of the spectrum, if a team, should we be penalizing those teams who are A, in a tougher district, or B, rewarding teams who are in a softer district? Because, for example, you get a soft district champion, and then you've got a district, let's just say somebody who did not win a district, as in, I'm just going to throw out a scenario.
Tech last year, I mean, that was a perfect.
So since we've used Tech and Arnwood, right? So let's just say Tech or Arnwood won that district last year, right? So Arnwood won that district, and let's go to the fact that Tech was on the outside of that number 8 ranking. So Arnwood is tough, Tech's tough, Wharton was tough. They're all tough in that district. And you know what? Let's use Wharton. Wharton is a tough. Wharton is exactly. Last year, Wharton was a product of their district. They lost to Tech. They lost to Arnwood. However, within the Tampa Bay region, they're a top 10 team. They're a top 5 or 6, 7 team, right? Yep. What if they would have got left out of the playoffs because they lost to Tech and Arnwood and Plant, and I'll just throw somebody else in there, Jesuit, right? They lost to those 4 teams, and they get left out the playoffs, and a team like, let's just say if Leto, nothing against Leto, but we know Leto is one of the weaker teams, but what if Leto would have won their district, all right, and they would have been put in, but now you got Wharton left at home. You see what I'm saying? Like, and if they're in the same region, and Wharton gets left at home, they're a far better team than Leto. But Leto won their district. They're one of the top 8s. They could be the 8th seed, but they're in that region, so they get an 8th spot, which would be bananas. Yeah. So you got folks who are like, yo, we got to do something else. So I guess what if you just went with a top 8 in the region? Screw it. No districts.
Class as well, or just region?
You go to each class, and then you break it down by region. So if we went, let's just say 7A, right? We go 7A, and now Venice is region 2. Okay, so Venice is going to get a spot. They're the number 1, number 2 seed in that region. They're going to get a spot. We're not even worried about district champions. We're just taking the top 8 in that region per class. So per class and then per region. The best 30. So you're trying to get the best 32 teams in the class. Because like what Derek said, if we're talking about best on best, let's go best on best. So now all you use is the rating system. The formula that the FHSAA and Max Preps, and forgive me if I'm misspeaking, however that formula and whoever's in charge of that formula, however it comes up, you're just going to take the top 8, each region, and then hopefully we have the best 32.
I like that. I like that as well as keeping the district. I like the districts. I do like that they kind of change them up, the districts, based off some of the performance of certain teams. So this year I know we had a big change in them, and they for weaker schedules and stronger schedules. But if if you have a high, if your record is like above average, if you're like an 8-2 team, odds are you're probably gonna make it into the playoffs. And then when you look at like the more of like the class and the rankings like that, if you're a top 15 team, you're probably gonna make it into the playoffs. Like if you look at like right now, if you look at just Tampa rankings right now, you could use a team. Let's say Durant, right? They're ranked number 15 in Tampa, according to Max Preps. They're under Plant City. They beat Plant City. Plant City's ranked number 12. The difference is Plant City's 7-2, Durant's 6-3. So does Durant make it to the playoffs? Is the key? So when you go and look at their rankings, and they're in 6A, which now you got Armwood at the top of that. They're going to have to play those type of teams. So how far can they make it in to the playoffs? They're going to have a Wiregrass Ranch. And then you got we look at those teams, you have Plant in that class as well. So you start looking at some of these teams in the class, how far can some of these teams make it, and we look at a lot of stuff real hyper local. You got all these teams in Tampa. We talked about that a few episodes ago, where it's hard to even keep these great players because every 10 miles there's another school. There's 2 other schools basically to choose from. There's a bunch of schools in Tampa. So the question that I have is like, whenever they kind of get out of the Tampa and they start getting to playoffs, then how are they going to compete with those other teams? And when you look at like Florida State, everybody complained about last year them not making it into the playoffs because they were a 4th team and they ended up putting, I think, Georgia in there instead or whatnot, or I forget what team it was.
No, I think Washington slid in that.
I think it was Texas.
Or was it Texas slid in there, and Florida State got out, and all the fans were upset about it. But then this year, you look at them, and they're 1-7, or 1-7 right now. And it made it kind of a clear, like maybe that was a smart decision because how good would they have done in that playoff anyways? They probably would have got smoked. So putting in the Texas in there, maybe a stronger team that could compete with that, Georgia, Alabama, Washington, those teams, it just really comes down to the team strength, and we look at it as like that local. And once you get out of the localness and you start getting these other teams out of Miami or Gainesville or there's some great teams out there in Central Florida. How good is Tampa going to compete in our class?
Well, go ahead, Derek.
The Bay Area be fine. What I kind of always hesitate is putting it in the hands of let's just call it the machine. Max Preps is nothing more than a machine. They're not going to have local knowledge or any. They're not going to understand the localness. What's going on in the area. It's just a machine that just here's a schedule and this team did this and well they must be that good because their record's this and. All that stuff is pretty algorithm based. There's no human eyes or intelligence on it. I tend to not trust that type of approach, but I do, if there was a way that, take people within the area locally that has an understanding on what's going on, I would lean more toward that type of structure than, leaving it up to, well, the machine spits out 0.789 and that's 8th place, so 0.787 just missed out. It was nothing more than nothing. So I don't know. It might would work in an area like Tampa that has how would you apply that to other areas? I guess would be a challenge. So I don't know.
Well, it would be interesting. Everything seems to come down to that district. And I could see how sometimes people could maybe look at that and not see it being fair because you could almost bomb your whole season, but you just happen to have really good district games. And that's why Durant is the top team in their district, over Riverview, Bartow, Bloomingdale. And Durant's had a great season. They're 6-3. But look at Riverview, maybe they haven't had the strongest season, but they're ranked second in their district, and now they might have an opportunity to go in, and they're playing against teams that might have been a stronger team. So maybe the strength of schedule should have a little bit more weight to it, which it does. But if everything for the playoffs all comes down just to the district, there are, like you said, going to have teams that are going to be left out and upset about it.
So let me I'm gonna go off a little bit. Where are you on? And you kind of mentioned it, Matt, with Florida State last year. Are you a top 4 team no matter the conference goes, or are you a conference champion deserves to get a spot person? Which side of the argument do you lie on?
Well, that was the thing about college football. They only had those top 4 teams that could go, but now they stretched it out to like the top 12 teams. And I think that if the thing about football, you only have games one day a week on a Friday night. But I'm seeing in Little League, for example, my son's team, they got to play on a Tuesday night, and they ended up knocking out the number 1 seed, which was, it was the Rams, 10U Rams versus the 10U Waterset. And Waterset was the stronger team. They beat the Rams. That they had to play them twice in basically in the same week. So I don't know. I like that. I think that the top 16 teams or however many teams we decide, more than 4, I think should have an opportunity to go and play a team in a playoff game. And it could be in the middle of the week. Like maybe, if a team had a great record, but maybe they just fell short in their district, maybe they go play a Tuesday game against a team and just call it a playoff game and let them enter in. And if they win, they keep going. They play another team. I like to diversify it, and I think more teams should have the opportunity to get into the playoffs. But maybe you don't make the game on a Friday night. You make it in the week where it doesn't take up that Friday night space. But they had a chance to go a little further in their season.
But are you still didn't answer it? Are you one of those people who feels that winning your conference matters? You get a spot at the dance if you win your conference.
Yeah, absolutely. You win your conference, you're going. Yeah.
Okay. All right. See, I don't. I'm on the other side, and that's what makes this interesting. Is because I don't think that I don't think that at all, and that's why with the Florida State argument last year, I was on one side like, yo, they're not a top 4 team. And just because you're a conference champion does not mean you're better than the 3rd team in the SEC. You have your major conferences for a reason. You're going to look at some of these. You're going to look at like the Big East or what the Big East. You're looking at the AAC or the ACC, right? There's a major conference. They're maybe a team and a half strong. So you're going to tell me Clemson, Miami are better than your top 2 teams in the SEC, top 3 teams in the SEC? Yeah, I don't think so. And with Florida State, losing Jordan Travis kills you. It devastates you. He is part of what makes you great, and without him, you're no longer a top 4 team. And then what happens is you'll get that pushback. Well, this is for these other players, and what about the other players on the team? Yeah, I dig it. I played ball. I understand it. However, if you took my team, our best player away from our team, yeah, like morally, I would say you should let us go play in the championship game. We should go get there because we are all part of this. We're not the same team without Brady Quinn. We're not the same team without Justin Tuck. We're not the same team without Julius Jones. We're not the same team. Those guys matter for the success of our team. Without them, we're a minus 25 team. With them, we're a top 25 team. So, that kind of goes into this district argument. Just because you win your district, should you go to the dance? So I guess that's kind of where it stems from. Because if we want to get the top 4 teams or the top 8 teams, do we eliminate district play?
So, and I guess it's all based off the circumstances. Like, I like how the NFL has it. You have your divisions, you win your division, you go. But then they look at some of the other teams in the rankings, like, okay, you didn't win the division necessarily, but you get the wild card. You get to go too. You're a really good team this year. You just didn't, you had maybe a stronger district in, let's say in high school, but you still have an opportunity to go. And now you go play in college, last year was a lot different. There's only 4 teams that could go. So I understand, and I agree actually with that argument about Florida State not making it. I definitely do on that. And I'm a Florida State fan. When you really look at it,
you got to be hurting. You got to be hurting this year. That's a topic for another podcast, brother.
So yeah, they're not doing too great this year. But, having only 4 teams have the opportunity to go was I didn't really like that whole gameplay, which I'm sure a lot of people didn't. That's why they changed it up. So when you kind of like trying to look at the different levels, now you look at NFL, you have the division games, and then you have the wild cards, and I think everybody that wins the division should have the opportunity, just like I feel like everybody that wins a district should have the opportunity to go play a playoff game. Maybe they aren't the strongest team in the whole in that class or in ranked in Tampa, for example. But they should have an opportunity to go play a playoff game, and it could be a Tuesday game, and they could just get smoked by whatever team that they play. If that's what happens, hopefully, they have a better game than that. But they won their district. They should get that ticket to the dance.
I'm with you. Because that is the current system. The current system, if you're going to have districts and you're going to emphasize district winners, then I think they should be rewarded, right? Same thing with college football. If you're going to emphasize conference champions, then they need to be rewarded. However, with the college system, that's not what the playoff rankings pulled into consideration. So that's why I was on the other side of the fence with the college rankings. Like, they don't care about a district champion. That college committee does not care about a district champion. They're trying to put just the top 4 teams together. But I'm with you with high school. Like, they say you need to win your district, then I'm all for it, because you need to win your district. That's going to guarantee. They put an emphasis on it. They need to reward you for doing that. So there you go. That's where it is. However, again, and I've beaten a dead horse, and we can kind of move on after this. Is it time to start thinking about moving away from districts and just go to straight 8? Just whoever the top 8 are, based on whatever formula that is put together, do we rock out from there? Okay.
Well, let's say that's in play right now. These would be your Tampa teams. And Max Preps, they had their different metros. So they have like IMG in there. Lakeland is considered Tampa. Manatee, for example, is considered Tampa. Clearwater. But a lot of times in the podcast, we talk about just like Tampa in general. But the 8 teams right now, based off Max Preps, would be IMG, Lakeland, Armwood, Manatee, Tampa Bay Tech, CCC out of Clearwater, and then Cardinal Mooney, and then Gaither. So what would happen is, in that case,
that's straight through with all classes. You'd have to separate that into classes.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. It won't.
Like if you're on the FHSAA site, what site are you on?
I'm on Max Preps.
Okay. I can put the FHSAA link in our chat. But I understand what you're saying. I'll tell you this as you're looking for that info. The reason the better teams, when they can insert games into their schedule, they schedule tough at the beginning of the season, because they're trying to prep their teams for outside of area play, because they know they may have 1 or 2 really good teams in their area, but once they get into the playoffs, all their teams are going to look like that. So Venice does a really good job with their scheduling. Like, they schedule IMG, they schedule Cardinal Mooney, they schedule Clearwater Academy, they schedule all these tough teams up front, so their kids get used to seeing what it's going to look like in the playoffs. And then they get to the back half of their schedule, they're rolling by then. They played all these tough teams. I think last year when they lost one recent year, I think Venice ended their season at 5-5. But they lost to some dogs. They ended the regular season at 5-5 and then went and made it to the state championship. But that was the plan all along. They're like, we're not going to fool ourselves and go beat up on some bums and then expect our teams and our players to be ready to play dogs in the playoffs. No, we're going to have a full playoff season, a full playoff schedule, all regular season. So when we get to the playoffs, there's nothing different. And that's kind of like the trend a lot of these teams were doing is that they put tough teams on their schedule. If they were able to build their own schedule, they put tough teams on their schedule to get them playoff ready and travel out of state too. Yeah.
Yep. So if you're watching the show, comment below. Do you think we should continue with the districts and high school football, or do we just go to like just top 8 in the class?
I'm pulling it up right now with you, Matt. So I'm gonna give you. I'm gonna send you this link, and we can kind of chat on that a little bit before we get out of here. I'll put this in our chat, my man. Boom. I hadn't looked ahead to the schedule just yet. To tell you the truth.
No, it seems like we're on the easy side of the schedule now.
Yeah.
For the bigger teams. Jesuit 4-3. They're gonna go play Tampa Catholic November 1st. So that's this Friday.
Okay.
Jesuit, Tampa Catholic. That's always a huge game, rivalry. I know Tampa Catholic. They won last year, right? And I think it was their first time beating Jesuit for it was like 10
in
years.
22 seasons, I believe.
Yeah, so so we'll see how that plays off. Obviously, Jesuit has been a huge team for Tampa Bay lately. You have a lot of great players over there. They have an awesome QB, Will Griffin. They got players. They have S.J. Green. You guys definitely heard of him. They have a really good team, but maybe their record doesn't speak for it. They're 4-3. So then if they can beat Tampa Catholic, maybe they go 5-3. But I'm sure they'll still make it to the playoffs because they're a top 10 team.
What class is Jesuit? I think they're usually 5A. No, they're probably gonna drop down. They're probably 4A. Let me see. So no, at least that's not them.
They're 4A. They're in District 9. So they're going to go to playoffs. They're 3-0 in their district. Their district consists of Hillsborough, Blake, Middleton, and Brandon. And it kind of makes you like, well, how did those teams, how do they figure out these districts? Obviously, if you were to ask me, like, how do I think Jesuit would do? I would say, yeah, they're probably going to win that district. You know what I mean?
All right, so let's stay here. Stay here with Jesuit. Stay here with Jesuit. Right now, Jesuit. Here goes your top 8 in that class. Just in the class, not the region. Just in the class. American Heritage, Jones, Vanguard, Norland, Port Charlotte, St. Augustine, Naples, Choctaw. Okay? That's your top 8. Now let's just go to their region. What region is Jesuit? They're probably in region 2 or 3. So let's go to region 2. They're probably region 2.
Naples this past week at Naples. That was a huge win for them.
All right, so
let's keep an eye on this team. Go ahead.
Jesuits region 3. So here goes your ranking in region 3 right now. So we're looking at 4A region 3. If the playoffs started today and we took out district champions, we're just going top 8 in the region. You're looking at region 3. You're looking at Port Charlotte, Naples, Dunbar, Clearwater, St. Pete. Jesuit comes in at 6. River Ridge, South Fort Myers.
And who's 9 on that list?
Osceola, Seminole. Right. So you're looking at it like, okay, Jesuit is in the bottom half at a 4-3 record, and they played some dogs. I think they had at least one out-of-state game. That's tough for them, and they're a 4-3 team, but they're one of the better teams in the state. They're just their record doesn't show it because they played some tough teams, right? They're getting playoff ready. But you look at, not to downplay River Ridge, all right? River Ridge, would you take River Ridge over a Osceola, over a Seminole Osceola?
Well, give me 10 and 11 on that list too, because I'm just curious.
Okay, so let me go to the next page. Actually, I can show more than that. Can I? Let's go. Region 3. Just to reiterate, Region 3: Port Charlotte, Naples, Dunbar, Clearwater, St. Pete, Jesuit at 6, Rivalries at 7, South Fort Myers at 8. So here goes 9 through 15. Osceola. This is Seminole Osceola. And probably it would say Kissimmee, right? So that's probably, you think that's,
Well, I'm not sure. I mean,
I'm not sure which one that is. Hold
no,
on. Let me click on it.
it'd be
Yeah,
Kissimmee,
that's the
Osceola,
Warriors.
Cowboys.
That's Pinellas County.
Okay, yeah, they had a nice year this year. Yep. So
All right,
give me the next few on that list.
All right, so Osceola, you got Northeast out of St. Pete, you got a Gulf out of Newport Richey, you got Hillsborough out of Tampa, and you got Blake. Okay,
So yep.
I kind of take that back about Osceola. I have my Osceolas mixed up. Okay, so your top 8, South Fort Myers comes in at 8, and then Osceola at 9, Northeast at 10. That's your top 10 in that region within that class.
Kind of worked out. Yeah.
Kind of worked out, right?
Yep.
And this is without knowing who the district champions are, because maybe, just to say, I don't know who the district champs will be in the districts, but maybe 4 of those teams aren't there. Mm-hmm. Or maybe 1 or 2 teams aren't there, or they're lower because they didn't win their district.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun conversation. So we'll see how that goes. I'm always rooting for Jesuit. I love seeing the Tampa team go far in all the different classes.
Give me a team like, let's look up Durant, because we know Durant has played well. They've had some quality losses. So Durant is 6A Region 2. So let's look at 6A. Durant 6A Region 2.
And what site are you on to see all these updates, just for the viewers to know how to go check this out?
This is the FHSAA.com. And then you hit the tab for rankings. That will pull up the spreadsheet that you can manipulate. And right now we're looking at 6A. So in the search, I just typed 6A. That's going to isolate all my 6A teams. And then I'm going to click the region to sort the region. And then I'm going to just skip around to get to Region 2 to look at Durant. Okay, so right now for Durant, look at Region 2. Right now, playoff started today. Durant would be your 3rd seed. Durant's your 3rd seed. You got Onwood, Kissimmee Osceola, Plant City. Kissimmee Osceola, Durant. I'm looking at the city name where Durant is located. Durant, Plant, Bartow, South Lake, Vieira, Melbourne.
Who's at the 9 and 10 spot?
So then we're going Davenport, Lake Mineola, Bloomingdale, Wharton.
Okay. I mean, potentially, yeah. I mean, it might could work. It's I'm sure, if we looked at all of them, I'm sure you're going to find 1 or 2, that might be glaringly maybe, 9 or 10 or better than 7 or 8. But, it's subjective, but, it's sounds good just with those 2 tests. So I don't know, maybe it would work.
Okay.
Let's do it. Make the call. Let's get it done.
Make the call.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to try. See how teams land.
Yeah, right? So.
All right.
And kind of like you mentioned about like a Jordan Travis, these teams can be like just dominant teams, and they lose one key player, and all of a sudden the following year they can't really replace that quarterback, or maybe they had like a star running back or receiver, stuff like that. And it's like, their offense almost falls apart. The whole team falls apart, That's one thing I noticed about Wharton. Unfortunately, these last couple of years, they've been a dominant team in Tampa. And when I went and watched them play against Armwood, it almost was watching Armwood play a JV team. it's like they took all the logos off their helmet. They just the helmets were just plain white. And I just was looking at Wharton like, man, and it was 55-0. I'm like, where's the old Wharton? I hope that they can kind of use the offseason to get some good players over there and get their team back together and start winning again in Tampa.
Yep, no doubt.
Yeah, I think once you have a coaching change, and then that culture maybe goes with that coach, and you bring in a new coach that's probably doesn't retain very many people from that previous staff because he's trying to
players.
Players.
You got your scatter of players, and then it takes you a year to just prove that you've got a the right approach and those to get those kids to either stay or come back or what have you. But no doubt it's a challenge.
Yeah. I think so, man. That's the tough part. That is the tough part about it. And then players start leaving. You lose one or two key marquee players to graduation. You lose one or two key players to transfer, and now you're having to build from scratch, essentially, from the ground up, everything that you've established. And that's kind of what happened to Wharton. I think they knew talent-wise and leadership-wise that last year was their year to get over that hump. But then if they could retain some of those good players, they may lose some games. They may go 500 again. But in a few years later, that demographic where Wharton is located, they're going to have kids flowing through those hallways.
Yep.
So it wouldn't take long to rejuvenate that program. But now it's going to take a little longer because all your talent's out the door.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So it's just one of those climates that we're in, man. And we're just using Wharton as an example.
Yeah, and we talked about some of the other episodes. Some of these kids, once you start having these losing seasons, it's hard to get the dogs that come to everybody wants to be on a winning team. So, I mean, luckily, that school's in one of those areas that there is a lot of good football players out there, and they will be able to build up and get their team back together. And, obviously this was just one of those seasons that, they went 2-7. So it just wasn't the season for them, but I can see them having a better season next year and building back up and getting back, becoming that Wharton that they've always been.
And how soon we forget, right? How soon we forget. Alonzo was a below to middle of the road program not too long ago. Leonard may have had a handful of wins in a handful of years. They weren't very good. Strawberry Crest was a homecoming game for a lot of teams. All these programs were average, but now look at them. They're winning. They're having success. And, we talk about Tampa Bay Tech a lot, and a lot of people won't realize this, but Tech at one point had the longest losing streak in the nation. Like, they had 3 years where they hadn't won a game. And then Coach Culpepper came in. I want to say maybe early 2000s. Coach C.C. Culpepper came in, and they started trending in the right direction. They went from 1-9 to a 4-6, and then 7-3, and then the playoffs, and then it just kept going and going and going. And that's just a good example. Like when I was playing, bro, Arnwood has been very good. They're a late 80s program. We didn't know very much about Arnwood. We were the big dogs back in that time. And then Arnwood, early 90s, when Coach Callahan finally started to establish himself. And then Arnwood has almost never looked back. If Arnwood loses 5 games in the season, everybody thinks the world's coming to an end because everybody's just so used to them having such success. Plant was a homecoming game for us. We used to put 60 on Plant every year. And then Coach Wiener came in, and then they went to 7-3. Actually, I think I know by heart. They were 3-7 his first year, and then they went to 7-3, and then they went to 15-0 his third or fourth year and won a state championship. And then for as long as his tenure there, they were number 1 or number 2 team in the area. They had a dip. In coaching changes when Wiener went to college, but now look at them now.
Mm-hmm. And that's all it takes is for example, look at Jefferson, right? Last year they were 1-9. This year they're 8-0.
Right.
And all it takes is for a team to get 1 or 2 players that might have a little bit of influence, a coach that has some influence, and then all of a sudden, hey, I'm going to this team. Y'all try to, move to that area, come over here with us. Let's build up a program and let's change the, and like you said with Plant, there's progression there. But I think that's still, I know we talked about it a few weeks ago about Jefferson. To me, that's still remarkable. A lot of the teams that they lost to last year, Robinson, they lost to, I believe, Sickles and, King and Middleton and Frito. Like, they won against them all this year, and so I know we talk about, does Jefferson have an easier or harder schedule? But their schedule is basically the same as it was last year if you compare the two.
Same head coach. Head coach. I don't know the assistant, but it's the same head coach there.
Well, I think the game changer, and I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, put it in the comments. But their QB that they got over there,
Jack Cunningham.
Cunningham. He also has some influence with, the 77 guys, and he got himself over the offseason. He built his offense for himself, and he was going to be the starting quarterback. He got his receivers, he's got his running backs, he built his lineup. He helped the coach build a team up, and now look at the results. I'm actually I love seeing stuff like that. The underdog just established a great little team, and then they prove everybody wrong. Everybody probably was like, yeah, Jefferson's not going to be. And then all of a sudden they're 8-0. And I think they're going to be 10-0 this year.
Yep, no doubt. Well, guys, I got to scoot.
Hey, we got to scoot. This has been a great show.
Yep.
All
right. Hey,
make sure you guys subscribe and like the channel, and continue following us on our videos. We'll keep you guys updated on high school football. Till then, we'll see you guys next time.
All right, hold on, fella. Don't hang up. Let me make sure we're good.